o'clock hour hits, we're going to be giving away a frankincense and myrrh scented handcrafted coconut wax candle, compliments of Dave and Cindy Lang of here in Hayes. And so we're going to give that away to the first caller who, here in just 60 seconds, the first caller who donates $100 or more will get this frankincense and myrrh scented handcrafted coconut wax corda candle. You're listening to 101.7 KJDM Lindsborg Salina, 105.7 KMDG Hayes, 88.1 KRTT Great Bend, 88.1 KVDM Hayes, 89.1 KGOH Colby, and 107.3 K297 AI Hill City. All right, let us get to then our trivia question for the 2 o'clock hour. Here we go. Which pope added the 5 luminous mysteries of the Rosary? Was it A, John the 23rd, B, Paul the 6th, or C, John Paul II? Which pope added the 5 luminous mysteries to the Rosary? Was it John the 23rd, Paul VI, or John Paul II? Call 785-621-4110. That's 785-621-4110. It's kind of funny. You guys don't get to see everything I get to see, but Michael actually put little quotes with the numbers in it just in case I couldn't read Roman numerals. So it's kind of, thanks, Michael. I appreciate that, but I could at least read up to the 23. Call into 785-621-4110 also for your donations. So we did use up our matching funds, but we are still headed toward that total goal of $125,000. We have just a few hours left. We'll get through this hour, take a break, and then we'll have our final 2 hours. Also, stay tuned at the 6 o'clock hour so that we can get our prizes drawn. And if you have given 250 or 500 or 1,000 or more, you have got your name put into that drawing. So please make sure to stay tuned for that. We are getting ready to speak with Tony Gabel. Mr. Tony Gabel, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Cody?
Fantastic. It's great to have you in here.
Good to be back here again.
Absolutely. Really quickly, I'll jump back in there and announce that Linda Becker is our trivia question winner. The correct answer to which pope added the 5 luminous mysteries to the Rosary is John Paul II. And we also had a priest on here the other day who now it's not officially added to the church, but he added his own mysteries, the ones of Jesus's healing, and he's even written a book on it. And so go back in and find that interview I did with him, but also you can find his book and go through those, because I thought it was just very neat the way that he added those to it. All right, let's get to our interview with Mr. Gabel about a century of consolation, honoring 100 years of Mary's promise to the world. So Mr. Tony Gabel was raised in Hayes and received his bachelor's degree in political science from Fort Hays State University and earned his Juris Doctorate degree from Notre Dame Law School. He's a full professor at Fort Hays State University. In his spare time, he promotes the First Saturday Devotion at Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish, as well as sings 4 masses. He is married to Christine, and they have 2 adult sons, Michael and Stephen. First off, what is it different between what's a not full professor? Just somebody that is that teaches part-time, or is there a different meaning to it?
Yeah, it's more of a rank more than anything else.
Okay.
So when you have different ranks of positions when you're a college instructor. Generally it's instructor, then assistant professor, associate professor, and then professor. And sometimes it's also known as full professor because it gets up to that point. Because at any point in time, you refer to someone as professor or whatnot. You have some faculty members refer to themselves as doctor because they have a doctorate in philosophy, so a PhD. There's a back and forth as to whether or not a person who has a law degree, since it's a Juris Doctorate, should be referred to as doctor or not. And so I usually go by professor. And the reason I go like that is because I go by that title is when I was in law school, all of my professors had JDs, and there are 3 levels of a law degree as well. So you have the Juris Doctorate, then you have a Master's of Law, then you have a Doctorate of Juridical Sciences, an SJD. And none of my professors that I can recall had a master's or a doctorate in law. They were just JDs like me, and I highly respected them. And they all went by professor, and so that's how I usually like to be referred to as in a formal sense. But here you can just call me Tony.
Okay, thank you, sir. Great to have you here, Professor Tony.
Yes.
No, it is so good. Tony and I know each other outside of this, and it's great to have him in here. So we're here talking about 100 years of Mary's promises to the world, and so I think we're going to get into then the first Saturday devotion that you help to promote, and maybe if you can give us some background in that, so that we can go from there.
Yeah. So. So first Saturday devotion, just so to give a little shout out immediately, or at least a reminder, there is a first Saturday coming up tomorrow. So today is a sort of a nice day. Today was First Friday. So those folks who practice the First Friday devotion, saw a number of them at Mass this morning. And so there's also the first Saturday as well. First Saturday devotion will take place at Immaculate Heart of Mary, 8 a.m. Mass. Please show up at 7:30. We have a rosary at 7:30, Mass at 8, and then immediately following Mass, we have a 15-minute guided meditation on the mysteries of the Rosary. Since this is the Easter season, tomorrow the meditation will be over the glorious mysteries. And then immediately after that, we have coffee and donuts downstairs in the parish hall. So have some fellowship there. So please join us tomorrow morning at Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish, starting at 7:30. It'd be great to see everyone there.
Okay. Thank you so very much. I want to remind everybody that you're listening to Divine Mercy Radio Spring Care-a-thon. Pray, hope, and don't worry. And I also want to thank Tony and Chris for donating $250. We appreciate that very much. I was able to say a while ago that became a $500 donation because of matching funds, but we used up all those matching funds. So what a blessing that we made it through our extra doses. And we are now just sprinting for the finish. Help us to get there. 785-621-4110. That's 785-621-4110. All right, Tony. So you got us talking. Whoop. Hold on, this is another great one. We have $2,000 in matching funds that just came in from Anonymous. So that came in just before Tony's donation. So they used up. That does now make that a $500 donation. Awesome. So we got another infusion. This is so great. I love sitting here and being like, boom, 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 boom. And we just, we get these donations. We get more people that are like, hey, I want to inspire others to make more donations. Here's some more funds. So that's wonderful.
This is the best way to spend other people's money, is through a matching donation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I say that often, not many times, when people are like, here, use my money too. Oh, you're going to spend this much? I'll double it for you.
It's a fantastic way of doing it.
Absolutely. Call it 785-621-4110. And we thank you so much to that anonymous donor. All right, Tony. So you already plugged the first Saturday, which is awesome. Now, can you help us to understand the first Saturday?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and give you a little bit of history behind that. So the first Saturday devotion itself is part, of course, of Fatima, the Fatima apparitions. And so the origin of that, I think you have to actually start back in the apparitions itself, July 13th, 1917. So it was that apparition where our Blessed Mother actually revealed that God wanted to establish a devotion to her Immaculate Heart in order to prevent divine punishment, and also to encourage people to be devoted and make reparations to her Immaculate Heart for different sacrileges and blasphemies committed against it. And so in that message, she said that she would come back later to actually request that devotion to take place. And that's when she did that. She did that on December 10th of 1925. And that's when she actually said, now's the time to start this devotion. And so she made that revelation to in an apparition to Sister Lucia, one of the three original seers of the Fatima apparitions, along with Jacinta and Francisco. They had died within about a year after the apparitions. So it was to Sister Lucia. And so this is December 10th of 1925. And this is why when people look at the 100 years and say, so why is there 100 years of consolation with this devotion? Didn't the apparitions occur in 1917? That's true. They did. So the centenary was in 2017. but you probably won't see much of a centenary around the actual request. Okay, this is now the time to start the devotion. And so that happened in 1925. Hence, we're coming up on 100 years since the request by the Blessed Virgin for this devotion to start and to take place and to expand.
Well, and probably the church has to approve something like that too, I imagine. I mean, you can say personal prayers and stuff like that, but if it's going to be a specific thing, the church probably has to have some say, don't they, as to like, yes, you can promote this.
Right. And so what happened there is she would in fact take these different messages to her confessor and also to her to the mother of her convent, and get to seek permission to go ahead and expand upon this devotion or to establish this devotion. And she did in fact do that, and so that did spread eventually from her confessor and the mother of the convent, then to the bishop of, I believe it's Lyra. That's where you'd find where Fatima is located. I'm trying to remember. It's a little bit difficult for me to remember those particular points.
That's okay.
But then it went from there. So that's how it was established. And so shortly after, I mean, there was a pretty good devotion that started to spread after 1925. It took off pretty quickly. But for the devotion itself, there are two major points in there that you have to look at least in my opinion. And so let's consider the words that the Blessed Mother actually gave us when gave to Sister Lucia to give to us with regards to devotion. She said, "I promise to assist at the moment of death with all the graces necessary for salvation. All those who on the first Saturday of 5 consecutive months shall confess, receive Holy Communion, recite 5 decades of the Rosary, and keep me company for 15 minutes while meditating on the 15 mysteries of the Rosary, with the intention of making reparations to me." Making reparations to her Immaculate Heart. So two major points in there that if you read through that should pop out. First one is this promise of assistance at death. So that is considered one of the great promises that the Blessed Virgin has given us with regards to this devotion. Because you can even go to the Hail Mary, a very rote prayer that all of us know, and you hear, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. And so the two most important times in your life, quite frankly, are now when you are living and trying to make decisions and good decisions. And then, of course, at the moment of death, when we all go to our particular judgment. And so to have this promise from the Blessed Virgin is tied to this devotion that says, look, I promise to give you all the graces necessary for salvation. I mean, that is a tremendous promise. One that I think sometimes is overlooked to us, and to encourage this devotion to help us at that moment of death. So just to be able to do the requirements of the devotion and to receive that sort of promise is amazing. Now, clearly, the most important part of it is to make reparations to her. And the question is then, what are the reparations? Reparations for what? And so Lucia asked that specifically of our Lord in one of her visions that she had of him, why he wanted to establish a new devotion consisting of 5 first Saturdays. She specifically asked this. And his answer to her was, "It is true, my daughter, that many souls begin, but few persevere to the end. And those who persevere do not receive the graces promised for it. Souls that make the 5 first Saturdays with fervor and to make reparation to the heart of your mother in heaven pleases me more than the tepid and indifferent who make the 15. So the idea is look for making reparations. That should be the key thing. There's a great promise attached with it, but the motivation should be making reparations for sins committed against the Immaculate Heart. And so that's what Jesus further explained. There are 5 types of blasphemies and offenses committed against the Immaculate Heart of Mary, hence the 5 first Saturdays. So blasphemies against her Immaculate Conception. People will say that they'll deny that was the case. That's dogma of the church. But there are people out there who'll say no. Blasphemies against her perpetual virginity. Blasphemies against her divine maternity and refusing at the same time to recognize her as the mother of men. Blasphemies of those who publicly seek to sow in the hearts of children indifference or scorn or even hatred for the Immaculate Mother. And offenses of those who outrage her directly in her holy images. And we've seen in the last several decades people doing terrible things with images of the Blessed Virgin Mary, among other, holy images. But so here Christ is explaining these are the 5 blasphemies that those 5 first Saturdays are making reparation for. And that should be the motivation. But attached with that is this wonderful promise of having assistance at the moment of death, which all of us will encounter.
Absolutely. We are talking with Tony Gabel on our Spring Care-a-thon, Pray, Hope, and Don't Worry, discussing 100 years of Mary's promise to the world and the first Saturday devotion. I want to remind everybody that this is our last few hours, or these are our last few hours for our Spring Care-a-thon. And this is what we do twice a year to help make sure that we can keep things going and keep evangelizing this world. This is kind of like my boys are at a track meet right now and they run distance. But what you always see in every race, even in marathons, at the very last bit, the last 100 meters, 150 meters, people sprint. That's where we're at. We've run the marathon this week. We're now at the final sprint. So let's bring those funds in. Let's bring them in fast. We still have about $1,750 left in matching funds. Call 785-621-4110 and bring those in. Let's bring it to the finish. 785-621-4110. All right, Tony, let's get back then and talk about, you just got done discussing why we would do these first 5 Saturdays to make reparations, and then where can we go with the devotion from there?
Oh, yeah. So the devotion itself, so what establishes the elements of the first Saturday devotion? What are these? So what must you do in order to accomplish this devotion? It's pretty straightforward. And so we looked at those same words from December 10th of 1925. And this is what Mary said to Sister Lucia. Look, my daughter, at my heart, surrounded with thorns, with which ungrateful men pierce me at every moment by their blasphemies and ingratitude. You at least try to console me, and announce in my name that I promise to assist at the moment of death with all the graces necessary for salvation, all those who, on the first Saturday of 5 consecutive months, shall confess, receive Holy Communion, recite 5 decades of the Rosary, and keep me company for 15 minutes while meditating on the mysteries of the Rosary, with intention of making reparation to me. So those are the elements. They're very, very simple. The first one is to go to confession. So you need to the Blessed Mother is asking us to go to confession, to reconcile ourselves with God. And during that time, as we go to confession, just like when you can offer up other things, you can go to confession and offer up those graces that are associated with it. In this situation, with reparation to her Immaculate Heart, not only are you receiving reconciliation with God, you receive graces yourself, but you can say, I do this in order to make it up for these blasphemies and ingratitudes that the Immaculate Heart suffers at all times. So you need to go to confession. Now, when should you go to confession to complete this? That question was asked, and Sister Lucy answered within 8 days, prior or after, as long as the second one, receiving Holy Communion, that you receive Holy Communion on first Saturday, you do so in a state of grace. So obviously, if you have a mortal sin on your soul, you need to go to confession and reconcile yourself. So that way you can receive communion in the state of grace. And that's the second thing. So go to confession, receive Holy Communion on that first Saturday. Next thing is to say 5 decades of the Rosary. It's interesting looking at some of the different translations of the message. They'd say, say a rosary. And it was understood at that point in time it would be a terce of the Rosary. So in Portuguese, a terce meant a third, which meant 5 decades. So it was 1/5 of the Rosary. So as long as you say what we would consider nowadays a rosary, that's what you need to do also on that first Saturday. Again, making the intention of it to make reparations to the Immaculate Heart for all the ingratitudes and blasphemies against it. Then you have to keep company with Mary for 15 minutes, meditating on the mysteries of the Rosary. Now, this is a little wider latitude what you can do on meditation. What we normally do is we'll meditate at least at Immaculate Heart on one set of the mysteries. So for 15 minutes, we have a guided meditation to meditate on each of the mysteries. Like this coming week or tomorrow is going to be the glorious mysteries. And we'll have either small snippets of scripture associated with that, or what I'll probably use tomorrow is there's a fantastic book by Fulton Sheen on the mysteries of the Rosary, his meditations. And I'll probably be reading from that tomorrow. because he can say some things in only the way that Fulton Sheen can say things. So the Archbishop did a fantastic job with that. But it's for 15 minutes. So this is separate from the rosary itself. So this is now just a moment to think about what those mysteries really mean. And it'll take it a little deeper than what we may do in the rosary itself. Sister Lucy, when she was asked about what she did, because she would do the first Saturday all the time. I mean, she just didn't do 5 and done. And there's nothing that says that you can't keep making the first 5 Saturday devotion. So she would go every first Saturday that she could. She said she would take one mystery and reflect on it for those 15 minutes and eventually make it through all 15 at that point in time and go back and do it again. Because each one of those mysteries, with any sort of contemplation, you could really get deeply into them.
Yeah.
So for her example, she had given like the Annunciation, and the fact of looking at the humility of Mary and how much that means, and of course listening to the words of the Archangel Gabriel, greeting her, the meaning behind that. There's so much depth there, and then doing those, making sure that you offer each one of them in reparation for the blasphemies and offenses committed against the Immaculate Heart. So each one of these elements, when you look at them individually, they support very much the idea of to Jesus through Mary.
Yeah.
I mean, when you go to reconciliation, you go to confession, you're bringing yourself back to Christ. When you spend time in looking at the mysteries, looking at Christ's life through Mary's eyes, that's what you're essentially doing with the rosary. You're drawing yourself ever closer to Christ. When you receive Christ, body, blood, soul, and divinity in Holy Communion, you're drawing yourself closer to Christ. So each one of these keeps drawing us closer and closer to Christ, which is what our Blessed Mother wants to do. And so it's natural when you think about it, those things to draw us ever closer to Christ through Mary. And it makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And I think that's something that gets misunderstood. And people can have a hard time with is, you start talking about promises and it seems transactional. It almost seems like, oh, well, all I have to do. And I think, sometimes this is where some non-Catholic Christians sometimes will. I actually had a friend one time say, you Catholics are just about check boxes, and it can kind of seem like that because of things like this. But the point is, if you look at it, you can understand like, oh, that's why it works, because what Mary's asking us to do is go to confession. Like, oh, okay, go to mass, meditate upon the mysteries that have to do with my son. So exactly what you're talking about, like, well, it would only make sense that by drawing close to her and listening to these things, and especially because it's been approved by the church, then it would make sense that at the hour of my death, I have become close to Mary, I've become close to Jesus, and they have promised then to usher me along. And like, okay.
And I'm glad you actually brought that up, Cody, because you're right. I mean, sometimes it does look transactional, and that's why that extra statement is in there from the Blessed Virgin and from Jesus as well, in a sense of the focus ought to be on the reparations. I mean, certainly the graces there certainly encourage us and help us into that process, but the deeper you go into reflecting upon the life of Mary and also especially Jesus, but looking at Christ's life through the eyes of Mary, then you start really realizing the importance of making reparation. I mean that's the whole point about confession too, right? So you reconcile yourself with Christ, but there's still something to do to I think the wrong word is to pay, but I think
stand up for.
Well, no, I think it was Father Fred who recently said this too, and I think he's used it a couple of times. It's a fantastic analogy. The idea of if you're at home and you break somebody's window, you're a neighbor and you break someone's window, and you've now committed some harm. You've done harm to them. You go and apologize. They accept your apology. That's the reconciliation part. But there's still the penance that you have to do, that reparation to make up for it. You still have to pay for the window. And so here the idea is focus on that reparation for things that harm the Immaculate Heart. people that do these sorts of things, they might not ask for reparation, but you can ask for reparation on their behalf. I mean, if you look at some of the prayers that we've learned from Fatima, so most people are familiar with the decade prayer when they say the rosary. Oh my Jesus, forgive us our sins, save us from the fires of hell. Lead all souls to heaven, especially those in most need of thy mercy.
Yeah.
So when we're asking lead all souls to heaven, especially the ones who have the most need for mercy, those are probably the people who don't know that they need to be making reparations. We're asking for grace for them. And so that's kind of what's happening here too. How do we offer up certain sacrifices for God, and to make reparation for these sins?
Wow, thank you so very much. And it also makes sense kind of on this human level of we wouldn't tolerate our own mother's name being dragged through the mud or reputation or things like that. And so, we would want to do something about it. Hopefully we wouldn't just passively sit back and be like, well, it stinks, but the world is the world. We would do something about it to make reparation for them harming our mother's good name, especially when she hasn't done anything wrong. So this then makes sense for our heavenly mother because she is God's greatest creation.
Yes.
And so therefore, in honoring her by making these reparations, we're honoring Jesus and respecting what God has created.
Yeah, as it's mentioned a few different places. I think Sister Lucia pointed out in one of her interviews, as a good son, he's not going to stand by and watch these things happen to his mother, and so it at least gives us an opportunity, a pathway forward to make reparation for those. And so that should be ultimately the focus of the first Saturday devotion. But if you need that initial sort of kick in the pants, it's this idea that we all are going to face death. To have the Blessed Mother assisting us at that moment as a promise from her, that's fantastic. I mean, that's beyond fantastic. It's just it's incredible. It's a very wonderful promise. And so if that is what encourages you to start the devotion, fantastic. But even better yet, to carry on instead of just 5 and done, to continue that. Think about addressing those problems, addressing those blasphemies that have been committed against her, and at least consoling her in this way.
Fantastic. I want to congratulate, but to thank Brenda Kuhn of Goodland, who donated $100. Thank you so very much, Brenda. We appreciate you donating that to $100. And now I think we're down then to $1,650 in our matching funds. So we want to make sure. Go ahead.
I was going to say you may not want to, but I congratulate her on making a great choice.
Well, yeah, actually, there you go. Thank you for correcting me. Yes, absolutely right, Tony. And so we want to also thank everybody who has donated and remind everybody that you're listening to our last few hours of our spring Care-a-thon. Pray, hope, and don't worry. We're looking to finish with a strong sprint. So help us to get into the finish and get in there well. Call 785-621-4110 and make your donation to help keep us on the air. We're talking with Tony Gabel, A Century of Consolation, honoring 100 years of Mary's promise to the world. So we've been discussing then the first Saturday devotion, and now maybe we'll get a little bit into, as you've plugged it very well with it starting up tomorrow. Did this start big? Did it start small? What has changed over time?
Oh yeah, well let's go ahead and focus a little bit on the parish and Immaculate Heart right now, and how that's happened. How has the devotion evolved locally here? It began several years ago, and when I was talking with some folks at the Coffee and Donuts after one of the first Saturdays, they said it had been sort of an off again, on again sort of devotion over the years on the Saturday. Sometimes simply because we didn't have priests available to be able to say Mass on a Saturday. But a few years ago, the impetus actually was from Donetta Robin.
Okay.
So we would see her at First Saturday Mass, and there was nothing formalized, but we had Mass on Saturday mornings, And she encouraged me to start formalizing it, especially with we'd always say rosary before Mass, but definitely try to encourage people to arrive and be there half hour before Mass to say a rosary. But then when we were talking about the 15 minutes of meditation, she had mentioned, and other people had mentioned to me as well, that that's the more challenging thing to do because you aren't thinking about it right away. Unless you're reminded about it and maybe you do it right away, you might not accomplish it on that day. So we started doing the meditations immediately after Mass. And it was after doing that for probably about a year, and we started getting more and more people coming to the devotion. It was Father David, who was still at our parish a few years ago. He said, "Why don't you have coffee and donuts afterward? Because this would be a great opportunity for fellowship too." So we added that on, and so before you know it, before we knew it, we had a lot of people showing up. And more recently, we've had a larger bump because St. Joseph's, they no longer have a Saturday morning Mass because there's only one priest there, is Father Fred.
Yeah.
So he's got to have a break too. But that's sort of a providential boost for us because now we have even more people showing up. One Saturday morning, I think we got very close to 100 people for Mass. And so that was just a fantastic sight to see on a Saturday morning, that many Catholics getting together to do this devotion. And it's been a joy to see it grow. And we wouldn't have had that great of a bump, but for St. Joe's having a wonderful, daily Mass devotion community. I mean, their people show up for daily Mass at St. Joe's, a good number all the time.
Yeah.
So my hope is to see more people join us, because I think the more people will do this, the closer they grow to our Lord and Savior. But at the same time, it encourages us as well. And it does encourage that idea of reparation to the Immaculate Heart. So I hope more people will reach out to others and bring them to Saturday morning. I know it's a challenge, but with every good devotion, just kind of like the cross country running or long distance running, there's always sacrifices you have to make.
Yeah.
I know that Saturday mornings can be busy, especially in the springtime, and even over the summertime, actually all year round.
Yeah.
Saturday morning is a busy time, but that is a wonderful sacrifice to make for such a good reason and for such a wonderful promise in return. So I encourage people to consider it.
Absolutely. I'm going to break in here really quickly, and we're going to do a trivia question. So we reached 2:30. Call 785-621-4110. Tony, do you want to read this one?
Oh, sure. I'll read it for you.
Awesome. The one on the bottom there.
The bottom one, yeah, 2:30. Okay. What feast occurs 50 days after Easter? What feast occurs 50 days after Easter? A, Ascension. B, Assumption. C, Corpus Christi. D, Pentecost. Again, what feast occurs 50 days after Easter? A, Ascension. B, Assumption. C, Corpus Christi. D, Pentecost.
All right. Call 785-621-4110. That's 785-621-4110. We are on talking with Tony Gabel about honoring 100 years of Mary's promise to the world and the first Saturday's devotion. So if you think you know that question, or if you think you know the answer to that question, call 785-621-4110. If you would like to give a donation, call that same number. If you would like to do both and help us to sprint to the finish, call 785-621-4110. All right, Tony. So you gave us a little insight into how it grew throughout the parish, and it's beautiful to hear that it has gotten to be this big celebration. But then also, what did it look like starting from its inception around the world?
Right. So from what I've been able to read about the history of it, is that it did spread rather rapidly, and that it was a very sound devotion in the church, especially up to the 1960s. And so it was a very, very well received devotion. It was gaining lots of strength. And in fact, if you go through some of the older hand missals that people might have purchased back in the 1950s, and in fact, I have one from 1950, The devotion is described in there along with the first Saturday or first Friday devotion, but it's a well described first Saturday devotion. And in fact, in another missal, the 1951 is the one from my mother. 1961 missal my mother actually bought for my father. It's described in there, and it includes, in fact, a prayer, an act of reparation that was approved by. I'm trying to think which archbishop at that point in time. I don't know if it was Spellman or another one, but it's approved act of reparation. In fact, we actually say it a few minutes before Mass begins on Saturday. And so clearly it had evolved, it had formalized. Obviously, there are elements to it, so it wasn't too hard to establish those elements, and it was looked upon very fondly. I think that we saw a drop off, however, starting in the mid to late 60s and definitely in the 70s, to where by the time I was growing up, I knew First Saturday existed as a devotion, but there wasn't anything formalized that I knew of, nothing like what we do at Immaculate Heart. And so it seemed to have fallen out of favor. I think part of it, this is just my opinion on this, was that the third part of the secret of Fatima was not released as promised in 1960. And so I think that suddenly people sort of shrugged and said, well, what's going on if this part that we've been told is supposed to be released was not released. And so that plus with all the different changes within the church post Vatican II, plus all the changes in society in the 60s and 70s, probably led to a sort of it being forgotten. But it seems to be making it somewhat of a comeback, and people who are part of the devotion do truly love it, and it is spreading again. So we'll see what happens. So as we come across to this 100-year mark, it's mostly trying to see if one could potentially, and I encourage people to think of it this way, completing the 5 First Saturdays devotion at least once as, for lack of a better phrase, a spiritual bouquet to give to our Blessed Mother, to say, this is something I want to do for you, and this is my way of doing that. Take this as a bouquet of flowers. Like here we're in the month of May with Mother's Day coming up. Just imagine giving a gift to your mother. This is one you can give to your Blessed Mother.
That's awesome. You're listening to Divine Mercy Radio's Spring Care-a-thon. Pray, hope, and don't worry. We're speaking with Tony Gabel. We're going to get right back to that in just a minute, but want to remind you of that number one more time, 785-621-4110. Remember, we just got that infusion of extra matching funds. So we have about $1,650 left in matching funds. Please help us to make this sprint to the finish. We only have a few hours left. Let's get some more of those donors. We've had this has been an absolutely amazing day. We've had $1,000 donors all over the board, some 250s, some 25s. We've had everything, and it has been amazing. Help us to continue getting toward our final goal. Let's sprint, and get there. 785-621-4110. I also want to congratulate Paulette Reichert, who won our trivia question. Yay. What feast occurs? Exactly. What feast occurs 50 days after Easter? It is Pentecost. And we also will find out, I'll have to look back and we'll find out. Actually, it was probably Tony. This might be your candle. I'll look back. Whoever was the first person to give this hour. So I'll check and find out, but that might be your candle.
That might be my candle. Wow.
All right. So Tony Gabel's in here talking about the first Saturday devotion. Had some great information, understanding it in a new light. But also, since this is 100 years, is there anything special planned worldwide by you at IHM or anything else?
So nothing at the moment. I mean, I've even kind of looked online, but I haven't looked very hard. But I haven't heard anything pop up. Usually, I would find it in different streams of information out there, but I haven't seen anything.
Okay.
I think the focus was, of course, on the centenary of 2017 of the apparitions. And so this is a different sort of centenary, looking at the request for the devotion itself. So nothing planned yet for Immaculate Heart. Perhaps we will have something. I know a few of us have kicked around a few ideas. Unfortunately, December 10th doesn't fall on a Saturday this year. The way the calendar runs, wish it had. It'd been really kind of neat to have the centenary on a first Saturday, but it doesn't happen this year. So it'll happen before the 10th. But I can imagine something happening at that point in time. I've got a few ideas of my own, but nothing formal yet. It would be great if we'd have a choir or something there. Do you know any Latin? Maybe you can
No,
chant in
I
Latin?
don't. No, my boys could probably help with that a little bit, but no, all I know are the Latin songs that we have in the missal. And so I could do those for you, but also if I came and did those for you, you would have people running out.
Okay.
So
well, we'd have to do it in Latin. We could chant some other things too. So
I don't know that my chant is very good. That's what I was getting at.
Oh, I see.
So
practice. We have plenty of months.
Okay, sure. Let's do it. Somebody get together with Tony so that I can get out of this. All right, Tony.
Perhaps we can get Michael in here and he can help out.
Oh, that's a good idea. Michael. Well, let's get back to discussing this first 5 Saturday devotion. And so do you think that the message of Fatima and these devotions are more relevant today? Do you think they're just as relevant now as they were? What has changed? Any of your view in that area?
Well, if you can imagine that the Blessed Lord was asking for reparations for sins committed against his mother's Immaculate Heart in 1917, or well, in 1925, that's when it started. But to say, look, these are things that need to be done, and she herself asked for that in 1917. And we think about those times and we say, wow, those are the good old days when things were all right. And you look around now and you see society the way it is. I can't imagine how it'd be less relevant today.
Yeah.
I would think that it is more relevant today than even then. And so, yes, when we look at the relevance, I think it's more relevant now. And to witness to that fact, to witness to the honor that is due to our Blessed Mother, and because we honor her, we honor Christ, her Son and our Lord. To witness to that is definitely needed at this time. And so the promotion of this particular devotion is important, and it's very relevant today. I think there's a lot of trouble in the world that can be solved. That can be solved through this devotion, through the power of the Rosary. The Rosary is a very, very strong spiritual weapon that we can use to bring about good. And I think this is a wonderful time to do it.
Yeah,
prayer is always needed, but something focused like this is absolutely needed.
Yeah, I would agree with you, because I think, we look back and it's not like we're trying to not say that World War I didn't happen, World War II didn't happen. It's not like everything was hunky dory. But when you say that, what I really think of is, but there were a lot of countries that weren't just openly mocking the things of God and his mother and things like that. I mean, even in the United States, things were actually pretty I guess amiable, whatever the word I'm looking for there is, with the church and the culture, but now, I mean, we're seeing, and this isn't necessarily against Mary, but like we had here not too long ago with the Satanists at Topeka, we're seeing a lot more things that are just directly in the open, mocking God, his goodness, his creatures, his mother. And so I would agree that, I think it might even be more poignant now than it was back then.
Right. I mean, you could look at, you're right, the desecration of the Eucharist by various parties or Satanists has been around for a while. I mean, if you look at an act of reparation that is made on First Friday, it's even discussed in there. And so we're talking about a First Friday devotion that extends back into the 1800s, late 1800s. So this has always gone on, but it's always been on the fringes, on the corners, out of sight.
Mm-hmm.
You just knew it was there, and that was just terrible. But it is more in the open, and that is a problem. And it's so, how do you combat that? And there are ways to combat it. I mean, we aren't helpless. And to think that we're helpless somehow, and we'll just say, well, I guess God will take care of it. Well, we got to ask. I mean, it's the idea of praying for for some intervention. And oddly enough, sometimes it's a matter of praying for our enemies, that they wake up and realize that they're doing something wrong. But something has to happen, and I think this is a good means of drawing attention of how to of the problems that do exist, but how do we address those problems? We know people will say terrible things about our Blessed Mother, but how do we address it? She's given us a way. She's actually provided a way to address it, that her son wants us to follow this way in addressing it. So this is a good pathway forward to solve some of those problems, I think.
Yeah, and I think also if we remember that she loves them as much as she loves us. And so, a mother loves all of her children, no matter what path that they are headed down, but she definitely wants them to come back onto the right path. And so, that's what she's asking of some of us children, is that we would make reparation, especially on behalf of those children who have gone off the rails, so that you're right, so that maybe their hearts could be changed, and they could come back to our Lord through her Immaculate Heart also.
Right. And so that leads into another one of the prayers too that were taught to the shepherd children. So the one is the Decad prayer that we talked about before. Another one is the "Oh God, I believe, I adore, I hope, and I love you.
Yeah.
And I beg pardon." You're asking for pardon for those who do not believe, who do not adore, who do not hope, and who do not love you. And so you're actually asking pardon for those people who do not do those things to God. I mean, who do not believe and do not adore, who do not hope, and do not love him. And so that shows that motherly love right there. Please, I'm hoping to save these poor souls, these souls that are on the pathway to perdition, to hell. And this is something you can do for them as well. So it's a very powerful devotion when you start digging into it more deeply and seeing how these prayers are written, how they were taught to the children, to help those souls that need them, to need help, so they aren't eternally damned.
Absolutely. You're listening to Divine Mercy Radio's Spring Care-a-thon, our last few hours of Pray, Hope, and Don't Worry. Call 785-621-4110 and partner with us in evangelizing to this world. We still have about $1,650 left in those matching funds. Let's finish strong. 785-621-4110. We're talking with Tony Gabel about the First Saturday Devotion. So, Tony, if we look then, and we're trying to help people to get involved. I mean, you're doing a very good job already of encouraging people here, plugging it. What else can the church do to encourage more people to rediscover and participate in this devotion?
I think part of it is to the church can echo and amplify something that Pope Benedict actually said. I believe it was back in, I'd have to think of what year it was, but he said, the Fatima message isn't over. It is still unfolding today. And so to help us better understand that it's not done. There's still things that are unfolding in that entire message, and to sort of encourage people with this devotion. Locally, there's certainly encouragement. Father Nick and Father Brian at Immaculate Heart do a fantastic job, of supporting us on First Saturdays and being there, being our priests there. I mean, we can't do the devotion without our priests.
Yeah.
And so to have them there to say Mass on that particular day is fantastic. And for them to encourage us who are sort of moving along to always give us words of encouragement, that's fantastic. The church more broadly, that message needs to be, brought forward again. And it's not brought forward. And I think the church could do so much more with it. I mean, this is a series of apparitions in 1917 that included a phenomenal miracle of the sun.
Yeah.
And where 50 to 70,000 people witnessed this. I mean, it was reported in the popular press back then. And so the miracle was there to confirm the messages that were being told by the Blessed Virgin to the children. And so to confirm, the church should re-up their efforts on this, and to say we need to be doing this. This is something that the Blessed Mother has asked for us to do. And like I said, for some odd reason, it seems to have died down for a while in those crazy days of the 70s and the 80s. But I see interest in it. I see enthusiasm for it. So I'm hopeful.
So, and one of the things I was thinking is that we often look at our parish priests and we think they're supposed to do everything.
Oh,
Like, well, father should start this, father should do this. And actually it's on us as the lay people to do most of everything. The priests are there to bring us the sacraments, but we should do a lot of the heavy lifting. And so if you are out there listening, you're like, well, how would I get this started? Well, first thing would be to go talk to your parish priest and say, hey, can I help to do this? Because if they hear it, first off, it actually usually grows a lot faster too. If father makes a mandate, people are kind of like, well, I guess I'll do this because father says so. But if it's a groundswell, well, then people are like, oh, okay, well, this was a quote grassroots type of movement, and I can kind of get on with that. And so
I think there's a little bit of trouble, unfortunately, simply because canonically, how many masses a priest can actually say. And so that's why that Saturday makes it so difficult for them. And our priests are definitely, they are taxed. That's right. And so part of this idea too is that we probably should be praying for vocations as well.
Yeah.
Because without priests, we don't have the Mass, and without the Mass, we don't have the Blessed Sacrament there. Without priests, we don't have the opportunity for reconciliation.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these things here that two of the main elements from this devotion are not available to us without priests. So we should be really thankful, number one, of the vocations we are going to have coming in, these 3 ordinations coming up here at the end of May for the Salina Diocese. So thank God that those prayers have been answered, but we should be praying and asking for more. We need these priests, and they're very, very important to us, and they're important to the Blessed Mother too. So we definitely need them. And so that's the other thing the church really can't do that. They just can't, zap you and make you ordained. But I think what we can do is certainly encourage vocations, make sure that we're open to them within our family.
Yeah.
Encourage our sons. I encourage my sons constantly.
Yeah.
To be considering that, to pray about it. And encourage people's sons too, to consider the priesthood. But you're right, as far as establishing the devotion itself, a practice for it in a parish, going to be a little bit tricky, I think, simply because of the number of priests we need to, our numbers of priests within a Salina diocese. But, thank God we actually have the ability to do that here in Hayes. And so anybody in the area here who wants to start that devotion, this is a great weekend to start it if you can, tomorrow. So come on to Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish.
Awesome. If really quickly, if
Sure.
you would, do you want to, I love the story of it. A lot of people know it, but maybe some people don't. Do you want to get into the miracle of the sun at all? The story of Fatima? And
so, story of Fatima. So 1917, actually it started in 1916. So 3 shepherd children would be Jacinta and Francisco Marto. They were brother and sister. But they were first cousins to Sister Lucy, and De Santos. Yeah, Santos was her last name. And so they are shepherd children in the little tiny hamlet of Fatima in Portugal. So in 1916, they actually had their first visitation from the I think I have to sit back and think, because I always know it as the angel of peace, the angel of Portugal. I believe it was the archangel Gabriel who actually visited them to start preparing them for the apparitions they were going to receive. And in fact, they were taught one of the prayers to start saying. It's a little bit longer of a prayer. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head.
I don't think I know this one.
Yeah. Now you've
put you on the spot.
You put me on the spot, and now I can't think of it.
That's okay.
The funny thing is, I say it every time before I go to communion, because it was something they were taught to pray. It sort of in preparation for that as well. I'll think of it here in just a moment.
Okay.
It'll come back to me.
That's all right.
But anyway, so that happened in 1916, and so the visions, the apparitions started happening in 1917. The first one in May 13th, 1917. And then for the next 5 months after that, so for a total of 6 consecutive months, but not always on the 13th. It was on the 13th of all months except August, and it was a later time in August only because the children had been arrested by the local authorities. They were trying to put a stop to this, and the Portuguese authorities at that point in time in 1917 were atheistic. I mean, Portugal was run by some pretty rough folks. So when we think about those older times and say they're sort of hunky-dory, there were some definite enemies of the church that existed back then.
Yep.
And so this made it all the more amazing that it happened in Portugal. So you had the visions in May and June. July was the big one. That's where we get the secret of Fatima from. Because the children were told a secret. There are 3 parts to it. You'll hear it referred variously as the first part, the second part, third part, or the first secret, the second secret, or the third secret. It's just one secret, but there are 3 different parts that they were not permitted to tell anyone about. But later on, Sister Lucy did get permission to reveal, the different parts. But then in October, that's when they were promised to have the miracle of the sun. And that's why a lot of people showed up. Some people showed up of course, they were unbelieving. They thought this was just going to be a big fake. They're hoping to expose the children as fraudsters. But there are a lot of people who believe too. And so because the children had said, there will be a miracle on October 13th that everyone can see. And that, of course, was going to confirm the message. And so on the 13th was the miracle of the sun. So the sun actually moved, danced, spiraled, did a lot of different things that were against any sort of law of nature. And so it lasted for like 10, 15 minutes. But it was the last part that was the most amazing part about it, because the sun appeared to come from the sky and it was coming straight at the earth. And by the way, during the whole time leading up to this, before the miracle of the sun, it was raining. Very cloudy, downpouring. Overcast. That's right. Yeah. Everything was very, very muddy. And suddenly the sun starts coming down. People start screaming. They think they're going to die. People start openly confessing sins. The sun stops and then goes back up to where it's supposed to be. And miraculously, everything is dry. Miraculously, things are clean. Miraculously, people are healed from that. And so even the unbelievers were stunned and started confessing their belief. So this is what happened. And as I said, many people witnessed this. People say this is probably the greatest public miracle that actually took place, witnessed by so many people. Christ's resurrection, of course, being the greatest, but didn't have as many eyewitnesses at that same time when he resurrected from the tomb. So this was a huge confirmation of what had been taking place the previous months. That's the history of that. The brother and sister, Jacinta and Francisco, were told that they were going to die soon, and they did. Within about a year and a half after the apparitions, they died. So that left Lucia, and she eventually went into a convent, became Sister Lucy, and then the subsequent apparitions to her about the first Saturday devotion, and then of course the request to consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart. Wow. I don't know where we're at here, so that's a longish story there. So
no, that was perfect. Thank you so very much. I love hearing it. It doesn't matter how many times I've heard it. I love hearing it. So thank you so much, Tony, for being here with us today. We really appreciate it. Is there anything that you wanted to leave us with in the next 60 seconds?
Yes. Again, tomorrow is First Saturday, Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish. We begin at 7:30 a.m. with the Rosary, so please join us for that. Just immediately before Mass, we pray the act of reparation. We have Mass. Immediately following Mass, we do the 15 minutes of guided meditation. And then we have coffee and donuts afterwards in the parish hall downstairs. So please join us for that. If you can't make it, maybe in June. Start in June. Start sometime. I encourage you to complete the 5 First Saturdays if you can before this centenary, as a means of showing a certain love and devotion to the Blessed Mother and thereby to her Son. and making that sort of a spiritual bouquet for her, of offering her that comfort, that reparation for those injuries against her Immaculate Heart. I think that would be absolutely wonderful if more people could do that, and I absolutely encourage people to do that. And above all, stay confessed. Go to confession. Keep our priests busy there too.
There you go, Tony. Thank you for your time, sir. Have
Absolutely.
a wonderful day.
You do the same.
Thank you. You're listening to Divine Mercy Radio's Spring Care-a-thon. Pray, hope, and don't worry. We want to thank all of our donors. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be back in an hour, but we do still want to make it to our final destination of $125,000. And we would ask that you would help us to get there by calling 785-621-4110, 785-621-4110, and help us to make that final sprint to get to the finish line. We do still have about $1,650 left of our matching funds.